Hello everyone. Here we will be looking at just an example of how to code your transcript, so how to get started. Make sure you have gone through the readings for the class as well as watched the VoiceThread recording to get an idea of what coding is. And here I will just transcribe the first couple of pages of this sample transcript. You will be doing the coding specifically either deductive coding, process coding, or in vivo coding for the entire transcript as part of your small group exercise. So I won't code the entire transcript. I just want to show you a couple of examples of how to go about coding your transcripts. So I usually, for a Word document, if I'm coding on the computer, I usually would use track changes. Well, I actually use qualitative software to code, but if I didn't, this would be an easy way to do it. So obviously this is a Mac, and your Word document will look different, but you should already probably know how to add comments. So the interview starts here. So let's start coding at the beginning. So as you can see here, the participant is talking about how drinking now is very different from what drinking looked like in college. And then if you read through the transcript, which is pretty much the first step of the coding process, is to read the entire transcript, you will sort of see that a lot of the conversation is the participant talking about what drinking used to be in earlier days and college days and what drinking is really now. So one way to code this would be to distinguish between the then and the now. So for example, here the participant is saying that drinking now is very different from what it was in college. So say we wanted to use a deductive code to just capture the essence of this little chunk of data. We would say differences in drinking, right? That would be just a small deductive code that we could use. Again, so the participant sort of talks about what college drinking looks like. So one thing we can do is kind of distinguish the thens and the nows, so that later on when you are looking through your codes, you can sort of distinguish between what happened then, which is in college, and what happens now. So an example of that would be if I coded this as then and then did a colon and then said let's use the in vivo code of drink to get drunk, right? So that's an example of an in vivo code because the participant really summarizes what they're trying to say here very well using that phrase. So again, another code would be then and then cheap beer. Cheap beer. And then talking about a party scene, a frat or basement scene. So again, then partying could be an example of a descriptive code. So here again, the participant gives then an example of, or really sort of recounts a memory they had of drinking. So you can sort of refer to it as a memory of partying, right? And then maybe code it as then, or you could just leave it as is. Really, that doesn't matter. Again, college is more hardcore drinking, so that would be a good example of an in vivo code. Let's see. So just do then as hardcore drinking. And then you're sort of looking at him giving an example of what it was like drinking in college days. So you can simply call it college drinking, right? Or you can talk about so this is where the split happens, right? So he's talking about what it was like drinking in college then, and then what it is like now. So he's talking about the then versus the now of, and then he's basically talking about drinking frequency, right? Drinking frequency. He is also talking about then, and see, here I'm really using kind of overlapping the same content. Then again, do then versus now, so I'm using multiple codes for really the same sort of chunk of data, or rather overlapping chunk of data. So this would be an example of then versus now, where we could talk about, so frequency is one, and then another then versus now is the social element to drinking, for example. And then we could say initially really it's pushing limits versus social element, right? So that sort of can be a comparison between what the drinking experience looked like. So again, obviously we're not coding the interviewer here, we're really just coding the participant. So again, this is an example of the now. So this would be now, like drinking is calmer, right? So that's an example of, I cannot type today. That's an example of the code for this section of it. And then again, he talks about social experiment, pushing the limit to get drunk, experiencing it for the first time. So you can code it really as then, first time drinking, or you could really call it, again, sort of coding the same chunk of data. It would be called, and then it's experimenting with drinking. And experimenting with drinking is an example of a process code, for instance. So, and then the participant sort of talks about, now I don't want to speak for everybody, but now as I've gotten older, getting hungover just doesn't have that kind of appeal. So I don't have to drink to get hungover, and then to the extent of when I want a beer or so, and so it's more about like finding what you like, right? So now drinking less. Again, you could say it's now drinking less would be one, and then let's see, avoiding hangovers again would be another process code here for now. And then it's about being more selective, right? So they're talking about being more selective in what you are drinking as well, being more selective. So this, I won't really go in and keep coding the data, but hopefully this sort of gives you just a little glimpse of how to really code your data. We've sort of gone and done a few deductive codes here, a few process codes here, and a few in vivo codes here at the beginning. So for your transcript that you are doing as a sample for the group exercise, you have to only focus on the type of coding that is assigned to you. So go through each chunk of data, and I've sort of broken it up into chunks already, and then assign as many number of deductive codes or process codes or in vivo codes, whatever you're responsible for, the number of however many number of codes you can assign to that chunk of data. So you don't have to just assign one code for every chunk of data. You can assign multiple, but just sort of go through each chunk of data and try coding just specifically what you have to code. And then once you are done, maybe a few days later, just go back in and see how your other group members have done the process codes, and say you're assigned the deductive coding. Just go in and see how your other group members have done their process codes and their in vivo codes, and sort of see what the differences are. For your own transcript, when you're coding your own transcript, as well as when you're coding your partner's transcript, which are the two which is the other exercise for this week, you will really be focusing on mixing and matching the coding. So it will pretty much look like what this is here when you're coding. So you will be using deductive coding, emotion coding, process coding, in vivo coding. Just sort of mix and match and see what captures your data the best. As you're coding, let me know if you have any questions, if you feel stuck anywhere. I will be happy to help with any kind of questions you have. Thanks for watching this video. Let me know if you have any questions on this. You can go onto the voice thread and you can just write down any questions you have over there. And I look forward to seeing what some of your interviews look like and your coding. I will try and give feedback to you as early as possible. Thanks for watching this video and have a great week ahead.